Can I help you?
Can I help you?
No,
Why are you taking pictures of our neighborhood?
because I'm filming because it's a wonderful looking neighborhood.
Okay, okay. We've had a lot of crime in our neighborhood.
Oh, you have?
So we're very skeptical about strangers in our neighborhood.
I've never been shaken down like that before. Ever, ever, ever. I'm not kidding. Out of all the neighborhoods I've ever driven through, I think she was the first person to squeeze me like that. What's that say about Pueblo? I was in Pueblo checking out the only really nice part of town one afternoon. The hood I'm in isn't too bad, but most of this place is messed up, I tell you. It was day 6 on my big Mountain West road trip, and this was the first time I'd actually seen anything really bad. The previous days had been spent in Salt Lake City sprawl and in some really neat little mountain towns here, but this was different. For the first time on this trip, I felt like I was documenting the type of stuff I normally do. If you ask people in Colorado where the worst place to live is, everybody's going to mention Pueblo. I've been doing this YouTube thing for almost 8 years now, and I've talked about Pueblo, and people email me about Pueblo, but I had never seen it. And after spending a couple of days here, I can say they were right. Looking back, I think this might have been the worst place I saw on the entire trip. Well, tell me how, what's wrong with Pueblo? Why is it kind of messed up right now?
I think it's all the dope, man. Dope game. It just takes control, I guess. Motherfucking people come out here and, I guess you wouldn't expect it, just somehow get involved or introduced to the drug, and then next thing you know, the blues took control.
That's Victor. He lives in Pueblo right now. He's seen a lot of bad stuff. You can see it in his expressions. I ran into him when I was in one of the rougher parts of Pueblo one morning. I pulled over because I saw this abandoned school in the middle of the neighborhood, so I got out and walked around a little bit, and Victor was back there trying to find some stuff that he could probably salvage for a few bucks. Right in the middle of some neighborhood, there's an abandoned school in the middle of an abandoned park, in the middle of a trailer park. The school's been burned and vandalized and squatted in, and who knows what's gone on in there. And there aren't any kids playing on this playground anymore. I don't know if the schools are bad here. I hear that they had to cut back a lot of the funding. But Pueblo's problems began way before the schools started shutting down. This used to be a big deal in Colorado. We're used to hearing about steel mills shutting down in the Rust Belt part of the country, in states like Pennsylvania and Ohio and Indiana. The 1980s were not kind to that part of the country. You close a mill like this, and a lot of your community never recovers. But we're not in the Rust Belt. Far from it. This is southern Colorado. It was kind of odd to see steel skeletons this far west. Pueblo was a steel town and a union town back in the day. They called it the Pittsburgh of the West. When the steel industry collapsed, 300,000 steel workers across the country lost their jobs. And people were frustrated because the feds had the opportunity to bail the industry out. They didn't. Here in Pueblo, 7,000 of the city's 100,000 people lost their jobs back then. There's a theory that that crisis is why Pueblo is having such a hard time today. I had an interview lined up with a steel industry veteran in town. I was going to ask him about how the steel industry collapse helped send Pueblo downhill, but they stood me up. They didn't show up for the interview. There was nobody there when I got there. What the heck? There's nobody there. I tried. But that's okay. So I took 2 days to drive around Pueblo to try to understand this blue-collar democratic stronghold. That's the Arkansas River. Some people say that's the lifeblood of Pueblo. The river's had a big part in the fate of this city. Ask anybody about the flood in 1921. There's still remnants of that flood downtown. Pueblo's had a bunch of ups and downs. In the early 90s, coal and railroading were a big deal. Colorado Iron and Fuel was the largest private employer in the state. That's when Pueblo was all macho and manly and hard-working and tough. But that's not the way things are here anymore. A lot of what drove Pueblo's fortunes is long, long gone. So I was here for 2 days. One morning I drove through what I heard were the worst parts of Pueblo, and the sides of town that people say are still doing okay. Most of the worst parts of Pueblo are on the east side of town, and that's where we are now. I kind of crisscrossed all over the east side of Pueblo one morning. Now, Pueblo has a bad reputation, let me tell you. Somebody here called it a violent, isolated hellhole stuck in a time warp. Good Lord, that's harsh. But I have to agree, it is not wonderful on this side of town. Just about all of Pueblo is either below average or a complete train wreck. There's burned out and vacant homes and pockets all over this side of town. A lot of stuff's overgrown and just really sad looking. Now, I've been deep into Mexico enough to draw some similarities between East Pueblo and south of the border. That's not a diss, really. It's just the truth. Kind of looks like it down there. Fireworks. It's just all the fireworks. That's what I'm running over. Firework debris. Thought it was glass. By the sound on the tires. A lot of where we're at's really old and pretty poor and dangerous. There's a lot of crime and homelessness and drug abuse in Pueblo. People know it as a welfare town with Hispanic gangs that fight one another all the time. Where we are right now is gang territory, East Side Dukes turf, I think. Pueblo's half Hispanic, and most of the gangs are from Mexico. There's the Sudaños on the south side of town, and the Latinaces, and the 13s, and then there's the Bloods and the Crips. It was described as East LA light to me, and I can see that. Like if you picked up East LA and stuck it up in North Las Vegas or something. But from what I hear, these gangs are just trying to be tough gangs. Like they run some turf here in Pueblo and they feel really big and bad. But they're not real gangs here. I wouldn't say that to their face though. Just from my house 2,000 miles away.
I mean, you can start, I had surgery, so I got a big old hole in my back, like that big, you know what I mean? And they wouldn't give me medications in the hospital. And so I was like, screw this shit, man. I said, look, I've been heroin addict for like, 2-3 years now. I said, I'm trying to get off the shit, and I'm trying to get, at least something for my back, because I was going through back surgery. I had a wound back, all that. So after I got cleared of the sepsis and all this shit on my blood, and I took off and went back to the streets and tried to find some drugs to get, one, the pain off my back, but two, just get high, because I was so fucking frustrated. Like, I can't do shit without, oh, he's just a drug addict,
So drugs are a big deal here.
Drugs, oh yeah, that's the main reason everything's all fucked, because everybody's caught up on some kind of dope or the other.
And like, is he dangerous? I hear there's gangs and shit here.
There's gangs, but they're not like, they don't really bother you unless you're looking for them, you know what I mean? Or if you're trying to fucking fuck with their family or friends or something that connects them. Otherwise, you wouldn't even notice they're there unless, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're not running around going, well,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most of them are quiet, keep to themselves, and
just stay out of trouble.
Yeah,
No, they won't mess with you.
They won't mess with you unless you go over there trying to fucking start a fight or take over their neighborhood or something,
So that guy I just talked to, he's been on the streets for a while. He was a heroin addict. He got hooked on pain pills because he had back surgery. He said that drugs are bad here. There's a lot of gangs, but
head south on Utica Avenue toward East 7th.
The gangs aren't gonna mess with you unless you mess with them. So I ain't messing with no gangs. But man, this area is pretty messed up. I mean, it kind of looks like Mexico. Like a burned out, fucked up Mexico. But I've been in some bad places. This just looks like San Bernardino to me. The crime is super bad here. This is the most dangerous place you can live in Colorado. It's also the place with the most welfare recipients and the highest divorce rate too. That's why I'm here. You know me, chasing the dragon around. A quarter of the population lives in poverty. 1 in 12 people here just doesn't work anymore. The median income here for a household is $40,000, and that's well below the U.S. average. And I mentioned the schools. The state's talking about taking over the Pueblo school district. Poor teachers. That's all they need, right? And people living here complain that Pueblo's just downright dirty with trash and used heroin needles all over. Robberies are a huge problem in Pueblo. Somebody told me that when you get robbed, the cops will tell you the first place you should look for your shit's the pawn shop. Jesus. I think the drugs are so bad here because this is the first big city you come to on I-25 when you leave Mexico. I also heard that the Italian mafia calls the shots in town. Not sure if that's true, but it sounds like there's a lot of people with their hands in the kitty here. Huh? Damn. Because of all of this, Pueblo has the lowest cost of living in the state, and it's one of the cheapest places you can live in the country. In case you're thinking about buying a home in Pueblo and living next to Mexican gangs, the cost of a house on this street's about $160,000. I know, right? It's not that much. These homes might be rank, but they're affordable. Can't say that about much of the country anymore. I also found some trailer parks in here that are in really bad shape. Like, I've seen my share of trailer parks, and Pueblos are some of the most tattered I've been to. I don't know if the gangs are up in here. Looks more blue-collar family than anything else. People told me there's homeless people all over Pueblo. I didn't really see it on that level that would make you sit up straight or anything. And I saw a few people kind of wandering around. I hear a lot of the homeless people live in the woods on the edge of town. The people who just want to just do drugs all day. A lot of the homeless in Pueblo came for the legal weed and never really left. They just collect as much government support as they can to try to make a go of it. It's really sad. The person at the hotel downtown told me that all the bums hang out at the local Loaf and Jug, but I didn't see much of that. And yes, that's what they call their lower-end convenience stores in Colorado. They're all over here.
Did you know Pueblo is the district for Lauren Boebert? She's hot.
I don't think she's very hot. I think she's kind of full of herself. She's in charge of several of Colorado's other struggling districts. Look, I'm a conservative, but I think a lot of people are sick of her antics.
I think all politicians are full of hot air.
I think you're right, Mappy. I don't think any of us are happy with the folks in charge anymore. So I showed you the parts of town that are the worst first. That's because most of you people want to see that. I got to keep your attention. But downtown Pueblo's pretty nice, actually. It's been described as beautiful and rich in history. I'd agree on some of that. It's certainly clean. I drove around downtown for a couple hours, and it actually wasn't what I expected. I mean, you hear about you're going to the worst place in the state, you think you're going to show up to a downtown that's all run down, and it's actually not. It's pretty clean and kind of not boarded up. I didn't really see a lot to do down here for entertainment, but at least it wasn't destroyed. I've seen far worse downtowns, let me tell you that. So good for you, Pueblo. I think Pueblo's pearl is its Riverwalk area. They took a natural waterway and turned it into a really neat little area in the heart of downtown. I liked it a lot. There's restaurants and shopping along the waterway. And I only saw like one homeless, sketchy person down there in all the 2 days I walked around. It's like, this is nice. You don't have to worry about weirdos walking around down here. I saw lots of families with kids and people with dogs and older people walking around at night on the Riverwalk. It was nice to see. Nobody seemed worried about anything. I think they run them out of this part of downtown. I think they have to. This is just too appealing for homeless people. So I think this part, this Riverwalk, is just off limits for them. Like, you guys can have downtown and the Lug and Loafs and go and camp out by the train tracks, but leave this part of town alone. We need something nice here. Look, they leave these boats just tied up on the waterway like this overnight. I'll tell you what, if this was in San Diego, those boats would have been squatted in, shit in, drugged in, slept in, and then stolen. Kind of shows you how much Pueblo is trying to protect its limited assets, I guess. Pueblo also takes pride in being home to 4 Congressional Medal of Honor recipients. Good for you. They're tied for the most of any other city in the country. And they remind you of that all over town. This is one of the few places I've been to that had some major energy setbacks that's growing. Pueblo's getting bigger, and the population increase is even picking up. Look at that little chart. There's more than 110,000 people here now. I think most of that's because this is really the last affordable place to live in the entire state. Most people don't come here for job opportunities. There's some government jobs and hospital jobs. A lot of people here work in the weed industry. There's 6 prisons and a mental hospital, which is just crazy. But they all provide good jobs, I suppose. And it's hard to get good workers to do blue-collar jobs these days. Nobody wants to do it. And there's still one steel company left in town. It's called Evraz, and it's owned by Russia. I know, right? The last steel mill in the area is Russian. I hear the people who work there say they're glad to be getting a nice paycheck, but don't say they work at the Russian plant. They just say they work at the mill. That's kind of a slap in the face to the patriots who live in the area, huh? And where's the steel going that they make here? Are they using it in their war? Anyways, Russia's almost caught up to us in steel production. Since the steel collapse of the 80s, our industry's rebounded, and you can see that we're now 4th in the world for steel. Some say the Chinese are way too far ahead for anybody else to catch them.
Strangers in our neighborhood, so that's
What kind of crime?
murders,
In here?
drugs. Yes.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway,
I'm harmless.
okay.
Good looking out.
What?
Good looking out for your neighborhood.
Yeah, we need to.
I know.
We need to. We all look out for ourselves.
Good.
So
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Well, good for her for looking out for her neighborhood. Murders and drugs up here? In this part of Pueblo? Wow. So remember the Badger Me lady? She lives on the west side of town. Over here is where all the newer homes are. It's far nicer and way more expensive than the east side of town. Stuff's in the $450,000 to $500,000 range for a place on the edge of the mountains like this. Not too bad, huh? I hear a lot of people are moving down here from Colorado Springs, which is about a half hour north. The homes down here are about half as the homes in Colorado Springs, and there aren't as many bums downtown Pueblo as there are in Colorado Springs. Yet. David Packard from HP, he's from Pueblo. Dana Perino from Fox News is too. And from what I gather, I talked to some people. A lot of Pueblo people take pride in their community, and they stick together through the grittiness. They try to keep the kids away from drugs and gangs. So there's a lot of people in town that give a shit. That's good. And clearly they're vigilant. The Badger Me lady actually followed me out of the neighborhood and tailed me pretty much to downtown. And by the way, she had Montana plates, which is kind of odd. Does she even live here? Is she a second homeowner? What's going on? Good for her, though, for running people out of her neighborhood. But man, things must be bad here if they're chasing nice-looking, successful people out of their cul-de-sacs. Huh? When I first got to Pueblo, I stopped at one of 73 pot dispensaries in town. Because, you know, Colorado was the first to legalize weed and all.
They're everywhere.
And then I opened it up just to see what it tasted like. I just licked it. I don't do drugs. I just had to know, like, what does a chocolate bar with pot in it taste like? Tastes pretty good. And then I went down to Pueblo's Riverwalk. I showed you some of that earlier. I heard that they drain this river every now and then and clean it. That's good. Somebody else told me it's about 5 or 6 feet deep. Pueblo has an interesting history. This was actually part of the Louisiana Purchase, and then it was also along a major trade route for the Native Americans. The French, Spanish, and Mexicans all owned this part of Colorado at one point. And surprisingly, this city was even part of Texas once. At one point, this was going to be the capital of Colorado. You probably didn't know that. You also probably didn't know the biggest solar plant east of the Rockies is going up here. That's cool. The PBR HQ is here in town. Don't know what the PBR is? Well, then you ain't macho, mister. Food-wise, it's pretty much breweries and Mexican food, which is fine with me. I wanted to eat at a place called Gray's Coors Tavern. I'd heard all about it. People were like, you need to go there and get a slopper. but it was closed down and they had caution tape across both doors. I asked people in town about that and nobody really knew what was going on. I was like, the one famous place in town looks like the cops kicked the door down? That sucks. So I settled on Brew's Ale House right on the Riverwalk. Cool place. So we're near New Mexico, and chili is a big deal in New Mexico. And you have to pick between green chili and red chili. And people are hardcore about the chili they pick. You're either green or red chili. So they have these chili sloppers that are a big deal in these parts. Everybody told me I need to try one of those. It's kind of like a one-bun hamburger covered in this goopy chili sauce. You either get red or green chili. The first night, I got a green chili slopper. I was like, this is really good. I also wondered if the chilies in this thing were grown by the Italian mafia. They run a lot of chili farms around here, I hear. The birds liked my fries. So the next night, I tried the red chili slopper at a place called the Gold Dust Saloon. Now, this was not good. Why is red chili even a thing? Am I missing something? It's like regular chili that you get out of a can. Well, I think I can settle this debate once and for all. Red chili people are basic, and I don't like them. Just saying. Pueblo has this famous alleyway downtown called Neon Alley, where you can see all these neat signs. It was interesting. Worth the 2-block walk, I guess, but I wouldn't drive more than an hour to see it. Really pretty signs, though. And speaking of pretty, some thrift store downtown had this Lonnie Anderson trash can for sale for $56. That is well worth it, people. Dames! And finally, this is a huge lesson that I want to share with you. So sometimes I give you guys hotel advice, like don't believe the star reviews on hotels, or book a stay at a crackhead hotel in Kentucky. But today I have rental car advice. So I booked a rental from Fox Rent-A-Car in Salt Lake City. The Jeep seemed okay, but by the time we got to Pueblo a week later, I just couldn't stand all the shaking on the highway anymore. So I took it to a tire shop in Pueblo, to a place called El Chapo. I was like, hey, can you look at these tires? They might need air, or they might need to be balanced or something. He looked at the tires and he was like, bro, come over here and look at this. Who sent you on the road with these tires? You're not going to make it back to the highway. You need 4 new tires now. I was like, I looked at the tires. I think they kind of fell apart on the way here. But I didn't think you had to check the tires that closely when you rent a car. So that's the lesson. Check the tires and probably even the damn dipstick before you leave the lot. I'll never rent from Fox Rent-A-Car again. Sending me on a month-long road trip across 7 states on tires that could have killed me. What were they thinking? I mean, you get a rental and you assume that you have decent tires. All 4 tires need to be replaced. And I am 600 miles from Salt Lake City. Pueblo, Colorado's faded industrial relic. It's messed up here, but this isn't even close to the worst I've seen in this country. Colorado's worst place to live would be an average place in many other states. Kind of looks like my hometown. It's cheap here, so that's great. It's the last affordable big city left in Colorado. You know, I could actually see this place getting picked apart by the rich housing buzzards and spruced up by the only remaining Colorado development scavengers one day. I mean, who knows? Maybe Pueblo will have its day in the sun one day too. But I don't think Pueblo wants to get too good one day too fast. I don't think they want too much new coming in, because I spent the next 3 days after Pueblo driving around the part of Colorado that many people say is thriving. And it is not all that. I can promise you. I kept hearing about longtime Coloradans saying, this state is ruined now, damn it. They might be right. I don't think Pueblo wants this.
Okay, so how's Pueblo kind of changed?
So Pueblo has changed in a myriad of ways, in the sense that we no longer have the meat and potatoes of
You can look at me. Yeah.
the still mill. After losing that, things really went south. It was the largest employer, also the largest landowner within anywhere in the state, possibly the territory at the time. So now we've moved kind of more towards green energy, as you might know, solar and wind. And we're obviously, just like everywhere, we're still trying to work on the capacities of what that can hold, how beneficial that is. We're getting away from coal. So we have that. A lot of people are in either vocations or really your largest employer since the mill. You're looking at Pueblo District 60, the local school district in whom I'm employed. You're looking at Parkview Hospital, at one time St. Mary Corwin, when it used to run more than the defunct state that it is now, and pretty much Walmart. So it's really a retail economy and service. People don't move here for economic opportunity. People actually tend to commute to Colorado Springs and Denver, whether that's being a contractor for the military at Fort Carson or any of our Air Force bases in Colorado. Really, that's where we've changed. We don't have the lifeblood of what was our economy, which was CF&I and Colorado Coal and Iron.
So like drugs, gangs, like, you hear Pueblo's like the most dangerous place in the state. Like, what's up with all that?
Well, as a native Puebloan, and sure, as a native Puebloan, they might say I have bias, but I'm telling you, I've never been to a convenience store, a grocery store, and of course, things can happen anywhere. I've never lived in fear. I've never felt as if, oh wow, things are so violent, I can't come outside. Sure, statistically, like per capita, sure, we have the most liquor stores, probably some of the most illegal guns. There's a lot of drug trafficking that happens through the lifeblood of I-25, Highway 50, and from Denver and I-70. The gangs that dominate here would be really the Southside 13s, the Sudanuals, Bessemer gangs, BPLS, Bessemer Spruce Locos. The Eastside Dukes kind of have that little communion with the Mexican Mafia there, with the Sudanuals. They call it Los Carnales in these parts. You have Eastside Aces, you have different offshoots of gangs. But as far as the gang violence, I mean, really, back around when I was born, you had the Romo killings, and that was a massive thing in this society. It really kind of shook and rocked the town. Some violent gang killings happening in quick succession. But, the problems that exist here are no different than you'll find in really any other city in the state. If you look at per capita, Denver has a lot more. It's just we're so much smaller. I feel that the national media and even the state, because of the welfare and the lower economic opportunity, almost pick on Pueblo to make it seem like we're this total shithole filled with rampant crime, when we have as much crime as anybody, but not so much more so.
Mm-hmm. So why do you think, you mentioned that like a lot of people leave Pueblo, there's not a lot of opportunities. I mean, it's a loss of jobs and not a lot of new jobs to fill it back in?
Right, you have loss of jobs. I mean, you have, like I say, with the new economic parts, I mean, we have Target Distribution Center. One of our biggest ailments has been PEDCO, Pueblo Economic Development, and they've really stonewalled a lot of things, like our beautiful Riverwalk here. They wanted to build casinos. We were going to have a minor league baseball team here, which, I mean, hey, everybody loves baseball, but with those things not coming through, you're really limited to either you're working vocations, you work for the school district or the hospital, you're in the medical field, all the things that basically any generic American city would have. So we have, in a sense, that big city feel, as opposed to the smaller communities like Trinidad, Alamosa. To small communities like that, we seem like we're booming. But outside of that, Colorado Springs and Denver really is our big brother. And we've never really recovered from the flood. We've never recovered from the loss of the mill in the 60s and 70s. People stay. People want to leave for sure because it's the same old opportunities, or people don't want to follow in their family's footsteps of being in the mill, or like I say, the mill is not too much in existence. But people want to explore. You know, they call Pueblo like a black hole, like you could never leave. I've personally known several people that said, oh, screw this town. And in 5 or 10 years, you find them back working a service job somewhere, and people just can't seem to go.
Yeah, I mean, how dangerous? I didn't feel like it was that bad. I've seen way worse.
No, as far as danger, it's like I would say probably the company that you keep. If you hang around with gangbangers or you're trying to make a name for yourself, I'm sure that they'd have we'll call it a fool's errand that they might have you run. But as far as a danger, that is way too amplified, and that's very dramatized and sensationalized by, I mean, I've seen this in the New York Times. I remember there are times where Michael Bloomberg, because a lot of people are for their Second Amendment rights here, especially with the crime, where they said we were a rural cowpoke town. This is almost verbatim quote from the New York Times, Michael Bloomberg, and that, oh, we probably don't know how to vote, and we probably don't know how to tie our shoes because we're just some rural cowpoke town. But like I say, you have the crime not of a Denver in the sense of per capita we're smaller, so it seems worse, but I don't live in fear. And if anyone was to come visit here, much like my friend here, you could easily come here as a tourist for a night or two. You shouldn't blink an eye, but keep the same cognizance that you would ever as a human being everywhere.
Yeah.
It's not particularly dangerous by any sense of the word.
How has the crime gone up? What kind of shit's going on, and what's everybody saying the reason for that is?
You're seeing a lot more violent crime, and you're looking more of, much like all of the United States, people always focus on like assault rifles, but you're seeing it done with handguns, typically by gangs, maybe a few road rage incidents here and there. But I think people deeply, whether this be right or not, people deeply associate the legalization of marijuana to the transient increase and a lot of people moving in. You have the opioid crisis and now the introduction of fentanyl in the last few years.
So it's just drugs mostly. That's the uptick in crime. It's just drug related.
Most, I would venture to say half or more, don't quote me on it, but I would say half or more violent crime stems from drug addiction, drug seeking mentalities, etc.
Okay. And like the East Side has a bad reputation. I drove through it.
Sure.
I've seen worse, but it's pretty poor over there. Is that just a bunch of people who, just older homes that never recovered from the old steel days, and all those people left, and they just kind of
I would
went
say
away?
I would say in a sense yes, and a lot of that's attributed to that, not full closure, but that absolute addled state that the CFNI has become. Now I want to say it's owned by Russians. Crime and welfare have been rampant, whether it's even the Bessemer neighborhoods. If you were to look in Bessemer, you'd find very similar states.
Why is it crime and welfare here in Pueblo and not in Colorado Springs?
That is a very good point, which it's very much one and the same. We only are faced with that. We're the scapegoat because we don't have really, we have a few higher socioeconomic places, but not to the level of Springs or Denver, and we have no suburbs. You have the Pueblo West community, which, I mean, they wanted to change their name to no longer be associated with Pueblo, so make that what you will. But, the issues here are prevalent, especially with the economy the last few years, in any city in the United States. I think we definitely get picked on, whether some of that is to do with not only socioeconomics, but perhaps even trigger words like race or ethnicity. To that, I don't feel anything explicitly that way, but I wouldn't doubt the way that the media spins things that could have something to do why Pueblo is chosen.
There's more Hispanics, so they're looked down upon?
I suppose so, even though we're a very intermingled society, white and Hispanic, not very many blacks, but everybody's intermingled. Sometimes it seems you're more likely to see Hispanic males with a white woman and vice versa than you'll see of any straight racial relations. But like I say, I struggle to find. I'm not sure why we're so picked on in that sense. We have a proud history. We are the home of the heroes. We're not what we once were, but there are attempts to bring us back in some sense to economic certainty and to hopefully get back to a thriving community, because we're a steel and union town. And, we're very proud of that. We're proud of the Bell game, all the different things that Pueblo has to offer. The longest football rivalry this side of the Mississippi River. We're the only one that could boast that, being the home of the heroes, some of the most Medal of Honor winners out there in the U.S. So we're a proud town, and there's good, decent, salt of the earth people here, although some may be lower socioeconomic.
Yeah, the population is not going down. I've been to a lot of places that were former steel towns, former whatever.
Sure.
And the population's plummeting. Population's going up here. I mean, what do you think Pueblo needs to do to make, what are they trying to do to kind of just turn things around and make it a little bit less like bad rap? Like, let's try to fix some of it up and make it not so...
Well, some of which what we've done from the educational and the career and technical standpoint is the local school district here now goes by world-class education. So they really have tried to revamp. We're now making in a sense, a technical school, not like Job Corps, but get people vocational skills. That way you can get, say, a welding certificate, et cetera, start your own small business. Like I said, PEDCO has been, I'd have to say, a hindrance towards economic growth in this part of the state, and obviously in Pueblo. But I believe what they're doing now, we're building new schools. We've expanded upon this Riverwalk here. We're in stage 4 out of possibly 5 or so of making this beautiful place even more so than what you see here today. I think they want to inject it from education and top down, that we want to become, as we've always been, skilled workers and skilled labor, and hopefully a union, fighting for employee rights and keeping great working conditions. We're a work in progress. We've never totally recovered from that flood. We've never totally recovered from the closure of CF&I, but like I said, we've went green in some senses, cutting back on coal, doing things that definitely we're kind of paying right now, but the more nuanced, what needs to be done and what I feel City Council is more moving towards, we want to get, we'll never be Silicon Valley, but we need to become more technical. We need 5G across the city. There are some, I want to say there were some legislative bills that wanted to get 5G all around the whole community, for what benefit that could be. We need to get more high technical, and we need to do a lot of the things, like I say, vocational, because as far as big corporations and people moving here, because of the bad rep of Pueblo and different things, it's really hard. I mean, we have Kmart's, Sears is defunct across the United States, but a lot of the Kmart's and different things, no businesses want to move into because of what they've heard about crime. And don't get me wrong, it's there. It's absolutely there, but only so much that it is everywhere. I feel like what Pueblo is doing is trying to reinvent itself as being from a manual labor town to trying to get more into high technology.
What's PEDCO? How did they screw things up? What is that?
So PEDCO, I am not entirely sure when they were created. I imagine the 50s and 60s. Pueblo Economic Development Co-op, whatever it stands for. They did not allow Walmart Distribution Center to come here. They shut down there being casinos here at our beautiful Riverwalk. They also, and these are things, mind you, that the local natives of the town all wanted. They wanted something economical. They love tourists. I mean, we have a rich history from being Pittsburgh of the West, the green chili and everything, which is real massive, especially with New Mexico, big rivalry there. But from what PEDCO has done, has absolutely hindered, stunted, and in fact blunted any sort of, I don't want to say venture capitalist, but even like the mill was like a welfare capitalist. They believed in having baseball teams. They believed in keeping their workers happy. We have not been given that opportunity to let some of the locals, or even whether it's migrant workers, which we have some in the fields here and stuff, we have not been able to expand or expedite growth. And although our population hasn't exactly risen, that's one of our issues now with one of our issues now with enrollment is we don't have so much young people. People aren't having kids, which is actually worldwide and nationwide. But things that PEDCO has done have been against the will of the people, if you were to talk to the common man in Pueblo, and it's absolutely left no room for new opportunities. So you're left with the same old opportunities. You've got Target warehouse, you've got the school district, you have hospital and medical field, or service industry, working at restaurants, working as your vocation, replacing windows, all those sort of lunch pail mentality, workman-like things, which a lot of Puebloans are proud to do, but you just don't find any investment here. And those reasons, like I say, whether they be economical, racial, etc., remains to be seen.
Are you looking to move and need advice? I do consulting. That's right. I'll sit down and talk about where the next perfect place for you and your family should be. I do it all the time. Together, let's find you a new home that's safe and checks all your boxes. And I can also help you find your new house, too. Email me and I'll work with you on not just helping you figure out where to move, but I can help you find your perfect home, too. That's right. I know awesome, reliable agents all over the country, and I'd love to connect you to somebody who can help you search for that perfect home. Hey guys, if you learned something new about America or what it's like to live in America, great. You should think about subscribing and turning on your notifications. You can also click one of these videos or playlists for more.
This is Sage, Nick's manager. This has been a Corner House Entertainment production.